The great hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with lights from 1,000 worlds. Commander Jiwon Park stood at attention in her crisp uniform, watching the ceremony unfold before her. Today marked 200 years since the Vrinathi had saved humanity from extinction. 200 years since Earth's skies had cleared and the dying stopped. Ji-won remembered the history lessons from her childhood. How humanity had poisoned their own world. How the wars over water and food had nearly ended everything. How Earth's atmosphere had been collapsing, and no human technology could fix it. They had been dying, all of them, and there was nothing anyone could do. Then the Vrinathi came. They were an ancient species, older than most stars in the galaxy. They lived in great water cities and had mastered the art of healing worlds. When they arrived at Earth, humanity had nothing to offer them. No trade, no technology, no resources worth taking. Earth was a dying rock with dying people, but the Vrinathi helped anyway. They brought their machines and their knowledge. They cleaned Earth's air and restored the oceans. They asked for nothing in return except one thing. Remember this day. Remember what we did for you. And when the time comes, act with the same compassion we showed you. Ji-won had always wondered what that promise meant. Today, standing in the council chamber, she was about to find out. Ambassador Dae-hyun Choi stepped forward to give his speech. He was an older man with tired eyes who had spent his entire career trying to make humanity respected among the stars. It was not an easy job. Most alien species saw humans as newcomers, barely civilized, still struggling to control their violent nature. 200 years ago, Dae-hyun began, his voice echoing through the chamber. We were saved by kindness. The Vrinathi taught us that civilization is not measured by power, but by compassion. Today, we honor that lesson. The other species in the council applauded politely. Ji-won noticed how many of them looked bored. To them, this was just another ceremony, another formality. They had not lived through Earth's dying days. They did not understand what the Vrinathi had given humanity. The ceremony ended, and Ji-won returned to her ship. She commanded a battle group of 12 vessels, all human-made, all stationed near the border territories. It was quiet work, mostly patrols and training exercises. The galaxy had been at peace for generations. That peace ended 3 hours later. Ji-won was in her quarters when the alert came. Her second officer, Lieutenant Min Seo-han, appeared on her screen. His face was pale. Commander, we're receiving a distress signal. It's from the Vrinathi homeworld. Ji-won was on the bridge in seconds. The signal played through the speakers, but it was broken, full of static and screaming. Then, it cut off completely. Ji-won tried to contact the Vrinathi homeworld again and again. Nothing. Only silence. Get me the council, she ordered. Within the hour, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Ji-won watched from her ship as representatives from across the galaxy gathered. The news was worse than anyone had imagined. The Vrinathi colonies at the galaxy's edge were gone. Not just attacked. Gone. Entire worlds had been stripped of all life, reduced to bare rock. 7 colonies in 3 days. Billions dead. What could do this? Someone asked. The answer came from the Council's military advisors. Long-range sensors had detected a massive fleet approaching from dark space beyond the galaxy's rim. The ships were unlike anything in the database. They moved in perfect formation, consuming everything in their path. The Devourer Collective, one of the advisors said. That's what the Vrinathi called them in their last transmission. A machine intelligence. They harvest entire worlds for raw materials. The council chamber erupted in panicked voices. Ji-won watched as Ambassador Dae-hyun tried to speak, but no one was listening. Finally, the 3 leaders of the Triumvirate Alliance called for order. They were the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. When they spoke, others listened. We must consider our options carefully, the first speaker said. His species looked like tall birds made of crystal. This threat is unprecedented. The Vrinathi territory is at the edge of our space. The second speaker added. She was from a species that lived in methane clouds. It is not strategically vital. Jiwan felt something cold settle in her stomach. She knew what was coming before the words were spoken. We propose a defensive withdrawal, the third speaker announced. He resembled a floating jellyfish made of light. All Council forces will pull back to the core systems. We will fortify our positions and prepare for the enemy's arrival. What about the Vrinathi? Daehyun's voice cut through the chamber. They're being slaughtered. We have to help them. The first speaker turned his crystalline face toward the human ambassador. The Vrinathi colonies are already lost. Sending ships there would be suicide. We must think of the greater good. The greater good? Daehyun's face turned red. They saved us. They saved Earth when no one else would. That was their choice. The second speaker said coldly. We cannot risk the entire galaxy for sentiment. The vote came quickly. 47 species voted to abandon the Vrinathi frontier. Only 3 voted against. Earth was one of them. It did not matter. The decision was made. Jiwan received her orders an hour later. All human vessels were to return to Sol System immediately. They were to fortify Earth's defenses and prepare for a siege that might never come. They were to leave the Vrinathi to die. She stood on her bridge, staring at the orders on her screen. Her crew waited silently, watching her. They had all heard about the Council's decision. They all knew what it meant. Lieutenant Minseo approached her carefully. Commander, what are your orders? Jiwan looked at her crew. Young faces. Old faces. Human faces. 200 years ago, they had all been saved by an act of kindness. The Vrinathi had risked nothing by helping Earth, but they had helped anyway. They had asked only that humanity remember and act with compassion when the time came. The time had come. Bring me all senior officers, Jiwan said quietly. We need to talk. Within 20 minutes, her command staff had gathered in the briefing room. 12 officers, all of them veterans, all of them aware of what she was about to suggest. Jiwan stood at the head of the table and looked at each of them. You heard the Council's orders, she said. We're supposed to run home and hide while the Vrinathi die. I'm not going to do that. No one spoke. They waited. I'm taking this battle group to Vrinathi space, Jiwan continued. I'm going to help them fight. This is mutiny. This is treason. Anyone who follows me will probably die, and if we survive, we'll probably face court-martial. She paused. But I will not abandon them. I will not let humanity forget who we are and what we owe. She waited for the objections, for the protests, for someone to call security and have her arrested. Instead, Lieutenant Minseo stood up and saluted. I'm with you, Commander. One by one, the others stood. We're all with you, one of them said. Jiwan felt something break inside her chest. Relief. Pride. Terror. She nodded to her crew and straightened her shoulders. Then let's go save the people who saved us, she said. Contact the other human ships in the sector. Tell them what we're doing. Tell them they don't have to follow, but tell them the Vrinathi are dying, and Earth remembers its debts. The message went out across the human fleet. Jiwan expected maybe a few ships to join her. Maybe a handful of other commanders who felt the same way she did. Within 6 hours, 70% of humanity's space fleet had refused their orders to return home. They all turned their ships toward Vrinathi space. They all chose to fight. Back on Earth, in the halls of government, alarms were ringing. An entire fleet had gone rogue. But Jiwan didn't care about that anymore. She sat in her command chair, watching the stars streak past as her ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. The Vrinathi had saved humanity when they had no reason to. Now humanity would return the favor, no matter the cost. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant when they said they paid their debts. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Commander Jiwan Park had defied the Galactic Council. 70% of humanity's fleet had followed her into what everyone was calling a suicide mission. The government buildings in every major city were surrounded by crowds. Some demanded the fleet be ordered back. Others cheered the mutiny. Admiral Minho Kang sat in his office at Space Command headquarters, staring at the reports piling up on his desk. He was the supreme commander of Earth's entire military. Every ship that had gone rogue answered to him. Every officer who had committed treason did so under his command. He should court-martial them all. That was the law. That was his duty. But Minho remembered the stories his grandmother had told him. She had been alive during the dying days. She remembered when the sky turned brown and stayed that way. When people wore masks just to breathe. When children died in their sleep because the air was poison. She remembered the Vrinathi ships appearing in Earth's orbit like angels. His aide knocked on the door. "Sir, the president is calling. She wants to know what you're going to do about the fleet." Minho stood up slowly. He was 70 years old, too old for this kind of decision. But someone had to make it. "Tell the president I need to address the entire military first," he said. "Prepare a broadcast. Every ship, every base, every soldier. I want everyone to hear this." 20 minutes later, Minho stood before the cameras. He wore his full uniform with all his medals. He wanted people to remember who he was, what he represented. He took a deep breath and began. 200 years ago, the Vrinathi saved us. They owed us nothing. We had nothing to give them. We were dying. And they helped anyway. His voice was steady and strong. "Today, the Galactic Council has ordered us to let them die. They call it strategy. They call it the greater good. I call it cowardice." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Commander Jiwon Park and 70% of our fleet have refused to follow that order. The Council calls this mutiny. I call it honor. I call it humanity finally becoming worthy of the gift we were given." He leaned forward. "I am ordering all remaining Earth forces to mobilize. We are going to war. Not for conquest, not for resources, but because it is right." The broadcast ended. Within hours, Earth's government made it official. Humanity was withdrawing from the Galactic Council. They were going to help the Vrinathi. And anyone who tried to stop them would be considered an enemy. The galaxy reacted with shock. The Triumvirate Alliance issued warnings. Any human ship entering the conflict zone would be fired upon. Trade agreements were canceled. Diplomatic channels closed. Earth didn't care. Dr. Heijin Lee worked in her laboratory without sleeping. She had been studying Vrinathi technology for 20 years. She understood their terraforming machines better than any human alive. Now, she was trying to turn that knowledge into weapons. "It's not designed for this," her assistant said, looking at the equations on the screen. "Vrinathi technology creates life. You're trying to make it destroy." "I know," Heijin said quietly. "But if we're going to fight machines that consume worlds, we need weapons that can reshape battlefields. The Vrinathi gave us the tools to heal. Maybe we can use them to protect." She worked for 3 days straight. When she finally emerged from her lab, she had a plan. It was dangerous. It might not work, but it was humanity's best chance. Captain Sunwoo Nam stood on the bridge of the Time's indomitable Asterisk, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. It had been built in secret over the past decade, using a combination of human engineering and adapted alien technology. It was fast, heavily armed, and designed for one purpose: to fight enemies that outmatched humanity in every way. "Sir, we're approaching the Council blockade," his tactical officer reported. 26 ships blocking our path. They're hailing us." Sunwoo nodded. "Put them through." An alien face appeared on the screen. It was one of the Triumvirate's military commanders, a crystalline being whose voice sounded like breaking glass. "Human vessel, you are ordered to stand down. Turn back now or you will be destroyed." Sunwoo smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We're coming through," he said simply. You can move, or you can try to stop us. Your choice. You cannot win this fight, the alien commander said. We have superior numbers and technology. Maybe, Sunwoo agreed. But here's what you don't understand about humans. We're really good at fighting things that are bigger and stronger than us. It's kind of our specialty. He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. All ships, prepare for combat. If they want to stop us, they'll have to go through us first. The human fleet jumped forward. The council ships opened fire. For 3 hours, the battle raged in the empty space between systems. Human ships danced and weaved, using tactics the aliens had never seen before. They fought, with a desperation that surprised their enemies. In the end, the council blockade broke. They retreated, unwilling to lose more ships for a fight they didn't fully believe in. Back on Earth, young Mi-Han watched the news broadcasts in her home. She was a civilian, a teacher in a small colony town. Her daughter had been sick as a child, dying from a genetic disorder that human medicine couldn't cure. A Vrinathi doctor, visiting Earth as part of a cultural exchange, had saved her life using technology humanity didn't understand. Young Mi's daughter was now grown, healthy, with children of her own. We have to do something, Young Mi said to her neighbors. They had gathered in her home, watching the reports of the fleet's progress. Our military is fighting, but we need to support them. What can we do? Someone asked. We're not soldiers. Young Mi thought for a moment. We can build. We can supply. We can make sure our people out there have everything they need. The movement started small. One colony town organizing supply drives. Then another. Then another. Within a week, every human colony in the galaxy was sending resources to the fleet. Food, medical supplies, spare parts, even personal messages of support. Humanity had decided to go to war, and everyone wanted to help. Admiral Minho received reports of the Triumvirate's reaction. They were furious. They had never seen an entire species defy them like this. They sent ambassadors to Earth, demanding meetings, offering compromises. Minho refused them all. We're done negotiating, he told the Triumvirate's representative. You had a choice. You could have helped. You chose to abandon innocent people to genocide. Now, you'll have to live with that choice. The ambassador, a floating being made of light, flickered with what might have been anger. You are making enemies of the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. No, Minho said coldly. You made enemies of yourselves the moment you decided some lives weren't worth saving. We're just the first ones brave enough to say it out loud. Commander Jiwan's fleet arrived at the edge of Rhinathi space 5 days after leaving their posts. What they found made her heart sink. 3 more worlds had fallen. The Devourer Collective was moving faster than anyone had predicted. How many Vrinathi are left? She asked her intelligence officer. Best estimate, maybe 12 million on the remaining colonies. The homeworld is still under siege. They're trying to evacuate, but they don't have enough ships. 12 million. Out of a population that had once numbered in the billions. Jiwan pulled up the tactical display. The Devourer fleet was massive. Hundreds of ships, all moving in perfect coordination. Her fleet had 62 vessels. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But they had come anyway. Send a message to the Vrinathi, she ordered. Tell them Earth remembers. Tell them help is here. Captain Sunwoo arrived with reinforcements 2 days later. More human ships had broken through the council lines. The fleet now numbered 90 vessels. It still wasn't enough, but it was what they had. The human commanders gathered on Jiwan's ship for a briefing. Dr. Heijin explained her plan through a video link from Earth. It was insane. It required ships to fly directly into impossible situations. Many of them wouldn't come back. We need volunteers, Jiwan said after the briefing. This isn't an order. I can't order anyone to do this. Every single captain volunteered. Sunwoo looked at the tactical map one more time. When do we start? Jiwan checked the time. The Devourers were moving toward the last major Vrinathi colony world. If they didn't act now, millions more would die. "We start now," she said. "All ships, prepare for battle. Today we show the galaxy what humanity really means when we make a promise." The fleet moved forward, toward an enemy they couldn't defeat, to save a people who had once saved them. Behind them, across all of human space, people watched and waited. They didn't know if their fleet would survive, but they knew their fleet was doing the right thing, and sometimes that was enough. The first battle was a disaster. Commander G1 watched 3 of her ships die in the opening minutes. The Devourer vessels moved like nothing she had ever seen. They didn't maneuver like living crews. They reacted instantly, perfectly, to every human tactic. Their weapons tore through shields as if they were paper. "Pull back," G1 ordered. "All ships. Evasive pattern Delta." Her fleet scattered, trying to regroup. They had lost 3 ships and hadn't even scratched the enemy. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. "Commander, they're not following us," her tactical officer said. "They're continuing toward the planet." G1 pulled up the display. The Devourer fleet was ignoring her ships completely now. They had decided humans weren't a threat. They were moving toward Aqualis Prime, the last major Vrinathi colony world. 5 million Vrinathi lived there. They had nowhere else to go. "All ships, reform on my position," G1 ordered. "We're going after them." "Sir, we can't win a straight fight," Lieutenant Mincio said carefully. "We need a new strategy." G1 knew he was right. But what strategy could work against an enemy that adapted instantly? She pulled up everything they knew about the Devourers. It wasn't much. They were machines. Ancient ones. They consumed entire civilizations and used the resources to build more of themselves. They had been doing it for thousands of years. "Get me Captain Sunwoo," she said. Sunwoo's face appeared on her screen. His ship had taken damage in the first engagement, but it was still functional. "We need to think differently," G1 said. "These things are machines. They're logical. They adapt to patterns. What if we stop being predictable?" "How?" Sunwoo asked. "I don't know yet. But get your best tactical minds working on it. We have maybe 6 hours before they reach Aqualis Prime." The call ended. G1 sat in her command chair, thinking. Machines operated on logic and efficiency. They made optimal decisions. But humans didn't always make optimal decisions. Sometimes humans did stupid things. Reckless things. Things that made no logical sense. An idea began to form in her mind. It was crazy. It was exactly the kind of thing that would get them all killed. It might just work. On the surface of Aqualis Prime, Colonel Bora Kim supervised the evacuation. She commanded 3,000 Marines, the only human ground forces in the system. They had landed to help coordinate the civilian escape. It wasn't going well. "We don't have enough transport ships," a Vrinathi official told her. The alien's water-filled suit made his voice sound bubbly. "Even if we work all day and night, we can only evacuate maybe half the population before the Devourers arrive." Bora looked at the crowds of Vrinathi families waiting at the evacuation points. Parents holding children, elders too weak to run, all of them waiting quietly, patiently, even though they knew many of them would die. "Then we hold the line until everyone gets out," Bora said simply. "That's suicide," the official said. "The Devourers will destroy everything." "Maybe," Bora agreed. "But we didn't come here to save half of you. We came to save all of you." She turned to her Marines. Defensive positions around all evacuation sites. Heavy weapons on the ridges. "I want every approach covered." Her second-in-command, Captain Dongyun Park, approached her. "Sir, if the Devourers land here, we can't stop them. We don't have the firepower." "I know," Bora said. "But we can slow them down. Every minute we give these people is another 100 lives saved. That's what we're here for." Up in orbit, Engineer Tae Young-shin sat in his cramped quarters aboard one of the science vessels, studying the data from the first battle. He was 24 years old, and supposedly a genius at understanding alien technology. Right now, he felt like an idiot. The Devourers made no sense. They adapted to human tactics instantly. They fought with perfect efficiency. They never made mistakes. Wait. They never made mistakes. Taeyang pulled up the battle recordings again, watching the Devourer movements frame by frame. They always made the optimal choice. Always. When human ships split up, the Devourers calculated which targets were most dangerous and focused on them. When humans retreated, the Devourers calculated whether pursuing or continuing their mission was more efficient. They were perfectly logical. That was their strength. But what if it was also their weakness? Taeyang started running simulations. What if humans did things that made no logical sense? What if they sacrificed valuable ships for no strategic gain? What if they attacked from positions that offered no tactical advantage? The Devourers would try to calculate the purpose behind those actions. They would search for the hidden strategy. They would waste processing power trying to understand the illogical. I need to talk to Commander Jiwan, Taeyang said to himself. Right now. The meeting happened on Jiwan's ship 3 hours later. Jiwan, Sun Wu, and a dozen other commanders listened as Taeyang explained his theory. You want us to act stupid on purpose? One captain asked. Not stupid, Taeyang corrected. Illogical. Unpredictable. Human. These machines have fought countless species, but I bet they've all fought logically. They've all tried to make the smart tactical choices. What if we don't? Sun Wu leaned forward. Give me an example. Okay. Taeyang pulled up a tactical map. Normal tactics say you don't sacrifice ships without purpose. But what if we do? What if we send ships on suicide runs that accomplish nothing except confusion? The Devourers will try to figure out why. They'll look for the trick. While they're doing that, our real attack comes from somewhere else. Jiwan thought about it. It was insane. It went against every principle of military strategy. It meant deliberately wasting ships and lives for the chance that it might confuse the enemy. How many ships would we lose? She asked. A lot. Taeyang admitted. Maybe half the fleet. But if we fight them straight up, we lose everyone. And the Vrinathi die anyway. This way, we might have a chance. The room was silent. Every commander there knew what Taeyang was really asking. He was asking them to die for a theory. To sacrifice themselves on the hope that their deaths would mean something. I'll do it, Captain Sun Wu said quietly. The Times. Indomitable Times will lead the first wave. We'll make it look good. One by one, other captains volunteered. Jiwan felt something twist in her chest. These were her people. She was sending them to die on a guess, but it was the only guess they had. All right, she said. This is Operation Cascade. We hit them in waves, each one more illogical than the last. We make them think. We make them question. And while they're confused, we find their weakness. Dr. Hajin's voice came through from Earth. She had been listening to the whole conversation. I'm sending you the specifications for the weapons I've developed. They're based on Vrinathi terraforming technology, modified for combat. But you need to deploy them from close range. Very close range. How close? Jiwan asked. Close enough that you probably won't survive the deployment, Hajin said softly. I'm sorry. It's the only way I could make them work. Of course it was. Nothing about this mission had ever promised survival. The battle for Aqualis Prime began 6 hours later. The Devourer fleet entered orbit and immediately began landing ground forces. Colonel Bora and her Marines opened fire, their weapons bright against the darkening sky. The Devourers sent wave after wave of machines. They walked through human gunfire like it was rain. But the Marines didn't retreat. They held every position until they were overrun, then fell back to the next defensive line. They gave the evacuation ships every minute they could. Bora stood in a command bunker, watching her Marines die one by one. They were buying time with their lives. She could see the evacuation ships launching in the distance, carrying Vrinathi families to safety. Fall back to Point Delta, she ordered her remaining units. We need to hold for another 3 hours. Sir, we don't have 3 hours, Dongyun said. We'll be overrun in 1. Then we hold for 1 hour and make it look like 3, Bora said. That's what humans do best. We make the impossible look easy. In orbit, G1's fleet began Operation Cascade. Captain Sunwoo took 5 ships and charged directly at the Devourer flagship. It was suicide. It served no tactical purpose. It was exactly the kind of thing no logical military would do. The Devourers hesitated for exactly 3 seconds, trying to calculate the purpose of the attack. Those 3 seconds were enough. While they were distracted, G1 led a second wave from a different angle. Not at the flagship, but at the support vessels. She used Dr. Heejin's weapons, flying so close that her shields scraped against enemy hulls before deploying the payloads. The weapons activated Vrinathi terraforming technology, designed to reshape worlds, now reshaped the battlefield. Space itself twisted. Devourer ships found their formations broken, their calculations suddenly wrong. Captain Sunwoo's ship was destroyed, but not before he transmitted one final message. Worth it. See you on the other side. The battle raged for 8 more hours. Human ships died in dozens, but each death confused the Devourers a little more. Each illogical sacrifice made them question their assumptions, and slowly, impossibly, the human fleet began to win, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they were willing to be stupid, reckless, and human in ways that machines could never understand. On the ground, Colonel Bora watched the last evacuation ship leave atmosphere. 5 million Vrinathi, saved. Her force was down to 300 Marines, surrounded by thousands of Devourer machines. Sir, we should evacuate, Donghyun said. Bora smiled. In a minute. Let's make sure these bastards remember us first. She raised her rifle and opened fire. Her Marines cheered and followed her lead. They would die here, but they would die protecting people who had once protected humanity. That was enough. Commander Jiwan's fleet was dying, but they were taking the Devourers with them. Operation Cascade had been running for 14 hours. 30 human ships had been destroyed. But the Devourer fleet, once hundreds strong, was now fractured and confused. Their perfect formations had broken. Their instant adaptations were failing. They had never fought an enemy that deliberately made terrible tactical decisions. We're getting through to them, Engineer Taeyang reported from his analysis station. Their response times are slowing. They're using more processing power to predict our moves. But they can't predict chaos. Jiwan looked at her tactical display. The Devourers were regrouping around their command ship, a massive vessel 3 times the size of anything else in their fleet. That ship was the center of their collective intelligence. Everything flowed from it. That's our target, she said. If we can take that down, the rest might fall apart. Getting to it will be impossible, Lieutenant Minseo said. It's protected by at least 50 escort ships. Then we do something impossible, Jiwan said simply. We're good at that. She looked at the volunteer list on her screen. 20 ships had signed up for the final assault. 20 crews who knew they wouldn't come back. Among them was her own name. She would lead this charge herself. But before they could launch, a new signal appeared on their sensors. More ships were arriving. Lots of them. Identify those vessels, Jiwan ordered. The sensor officer's voice was surprised. Sir, they're council ships. 3 different species. They're broadcasting friendship signals. On the main screen, an alien face appeared. It was Counselor Isuel Park, a member of a species that looked like walking plants. She was one of the few who had voted against abandoning the Vrinathi. Commander Jiwan, Isuel said, my people have been watching your battle. Your courage has shamed us. We have broken from the Triumvirate Alliance. We are here to help. More ships appeared. Then more. Species from across the galaxy, inspired by humanity's stand, had chosen to fight. They brought fresh vessels and weapons. The human fleet, battered and exhausted, suddenly had reinforcements. Jiwan felt tears in her eyes but forced them down. There would be time to cry later. Right now, there was still a battle to win. Thank you, Counselor, she said. But I need you to do something else. We're going after the command ship. We need you to protect the evacuation routes and make sure the Vrinathi get to safety. That will leave you badly outnumbered at the command ship, Isul warned. I know, Jiwan said. But saving the Vrinathi is why we came here. Everything else is secondary. She cut the transmission and addressed her fleet. All volunteers for the final assault. This is it. We're going to punch through to that command ship and tear it apart. Most of us won't survive. But if we succeed, we save millions of lives. That's what humanity does. We make the hard choices. 20 ships formed up around her flagship. 20 crews who had already written their goodbye letters home. 20 vessels ready to make the galaxy remember Earth. All ships, Jiwan said softly. Attack. The human strike force accelerated toward the Devourer command ship. They flew in patterns that made no tactical sense, weaving and spinning randomly. The Devourers tried to predict their movements, and failed. By the time the machines adjusted, the humans had already changed course again. Ships died. Jiwan watched the times. Resolution times explode on her left. The times, defiant times on her right, lost all power and drifted into enemy fire. But the remaining ships pushed forward, closer and closer to the command vessel. Behind them, the Vrinathi were escaping. Millions of lives saved because human ships had chosen to stand between them and death. Jiwan's own ship took a direct hit. Systems failed across the board. Half her crew was dead or injured. But they were close now. Close enough to deploy Dr. Heejin's weapon. Prepare the final payload, Jiwan ordered. All remaining ships, coordinate deployment. 8 ships were left. 8 chances to kill the command vessel. They positioned themselves around it like a net, matching its movements perfectly. The Devourer ship tried to escape, but everywhere it turned, a human vessel was waiting. Deploy, Jiwan shouted. 8 weapons activated simultaneously. Vrinathi technology turned into something beautiful and terrible. Space itself warped around the command ship. The vessel's shields collapsed. Its armor cracked. Its perfect coordination with the rest of the fleet shattered. But the weapons came at a cost. Ships deploying them had to drop all shields and divert all power to the payload. They were completely defenseless. 6 more human ships died in the deployment. Only Jiwan's flagship and 1 other survived. But the Devourer command ship was dying too. We need to get inside, Jiwan said. Find the Central Intelligence Core and destroy it. Sir, we can barely keep our own ship running, Mincio protested. A boarding action is impossible. Jiwan looked at her remaining crew. 40 people out of an original 200. They were wounded, exhausted, running on nothing but determination. Then we do the impossible one more time, she said. Every hand went up. They suited up in combat armor and took an assault shuttle to the dying command ship. Its hull was breached in a dozen places. Fires burned in the vacuum, fed by leaking atmosphere. The human team moved through the twisted corridors, following Taeyang's scans toward the intelligence core. They met resistance. Devourer machines, damaged but still functioning, tried to stop them. The humans fought with weapons and tools, anything they could use. They lost people with every step, but they kept moving forward. Finally, they reached it. The intelligence core. A massive sphere of crystalline processors, still pulsing with light, still coordinating the fleet below, still killing Vrinathi. Jiwan planted the last explosive charge on its surface. She set the timer for 60 seconds. That would barely give them time to get back to the shuttle. As she worked, a voice spoke from the sphere. "We do not understand," it said. "You gain nothing from this. You lose everything. Your species will be weaker. Your fleet is destroyed. Why would you sacrifice so much for another species?" Jiwan paused. She looked at the intelligence that had destroyed billions of lives, that had consumed entire civilizations, that could not comprehend what she was about to say. "Because someone did it for us once," she said quietly. "And because it's who we choose to be." The devourer processed this for a moment. "That is illogical." "Yeah," Jiwan agreed. "That's the point." She activated the charge and ran. The explosion tore through the command ship. The intelligence core shattered. Without its central coordination, the devourer fleet began to fall apart. Ships stopped responding. Their perfect formations collapsed into chaos. Some started attacking each other. Their programming corrupted without central control. Jiwan and her team made it to their shuttle seconds before the command ship began to break apart. They flew back to her flagship, watching the devourer fleet destroy itself. Back on Aqualis Prime, Colonel Bora and her last 300 Marines were still fighting. They had held their position for 8 hours beyond all reasonable expectations. They were out of ammunition, fighting with improvised weapons and bare hands. Then the devourers just stopped. The machines froze in place, their connection to the central intelligence severed. They stood like statues, no longer a threat. Bora stared at them in disbelief. Then she started laughing. Her Marines joined her. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had held the line long enough. "Sir, we're receiving transmission from Commander Jiwan," her communications officer said. "The devourers are defeated. We can evacuate now." Bora looked at her 300 survivors. They had started with 3,000. The rest had died protecting the Vrinathi evacuation. "Tell Commander Jiwan we're coming home," Bora said. "And tell her we saved everyone. Every single Vrinathi on this planet got out. 5 million lives. Saved by 3,000 Marines who had held the line." In the wreckage of the battlefield, Jiwan sat in her damaged command chair and watched the reports come in. The human fleet had lost 40 ships, 30,000 crew members dead. But the Vrinathi were safe. The devourers were destroyed. The mission was complete. "Commander," Lieutenant Mincio said softly, "we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Hundreds of species. They want to thank us. They're calling us heroes." Jiwan shook her head. "We're not heroes. We just paid a debt." But as she watched the Vrinathi evacuation ships arrive safely at their new homes, as she saw the surviving human vessels limp toward repair stations, as she received word that Earth had been flooded with messages of support from species they had never even met, Jiwan understood something. Humanity hadn't just saved the Vrinathi. They had reminded the galaxy what civilization really meant. Not power, not strategy, not cold calculations of gain and loss. Compassion, sacrifice, the willingness to stand up for others even when there was no benefit to yourself. The galaxy had measured humanity by their past mistakes. But today, humanity had shown what they chose to be, and the stars would never forget. The Galactic Council chamber was different now. The seats of the Triumvirate Alliance sat empty. 12 species had withdrawn from the Council, refusing to follow leaders who had abandoned the Vrinathi. They called themselves the Covenant Alliance now, and they had invited humanity to join them as founding members. Ambassador Daehyun Choi stood before what remained of the Council. He was older now, more tired, but his voice was strong. "You asked us here to explain our actions," he said. "You want to know why humanity defied your orders? Why we risked everything for another species?" He paused. "The answer is simple. Because it was right." The remaining council members shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a floating jellyfish creature from the old triumvirate, spoke up. You cost us ships. You cost us credibility. You turned half the galaxy against us. No, Daeyun said firmly. You did that yourselves. You showed everyone what you truly valued. Strategy over morality. Power over compassion. Humanity just showed them there was another way. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species defended the old council. Others demanded reform. It was chaos, but it was the chaos of change. The galaxy was finally questioning the old powers. Commander Ji-won Park didn't attend the council sessions. She had been invited, celebrated, offered medals and honors. She had refused them all. Instead, she returned to Earth and submitted her resignation from the military. Admiral Minho had refused to accept it. You did what I ordered you to do, he told her in his office. I take full responsibility for the operation. Everyone. When the two, Sir, I disobeyed direct orders from the council, Ji-won protested. I committed mutiny. You followed your conscience, Minho corrected. And you reminded humanity what we stand for. That's not mutiny. That's leadership. He smiled. Besides, Earth needs heroes right now. Whether you like it or not, that's what you've become. Ji-won thought about the 30,000 who had died under her command. About Captain Sun-woo, who had died in the first wave. About the Marines who had held Aqualis Prime. Heroes seemed like the wrong word for what they had done, but maybe that was the point. Real heroes never felt like heroes. They just did what needed to be done. Dr. Haejin Lee stood in a new laboratory, working alongside Vrinathi scientists. They were building something together, a research station that would be shared by both species, human and Vrinathi technology, combined for peaceful purposes. It's strange, one of the Vrinathi researchers said. His water-filled suit bubbled as he spoke. 200 years ago, we gave you technology to save your world. Now you've used that same technology to save ours. Haejin smiled. That's how gifts are supposed to work. They keep giving. The Vrinathi researcher made a gesture that might have been agreement. My daughter was evacuated from Aqualis Prime. She's only 12 years old. She would have died if your Marines hadn't held that line. I'm glad she's safe, Haejin said softly. I wanted you to know, the researcher continued, that every Vrinathi child is learning about what humanity did, about the ships that sacrificed themselves, about the Marines who stood their ground. We will never forget. Haejin felt tears in her eyes. That's all we wanted. For you to survive. For your children to have a future. Tension. Thanks for watching. Today Nan. And Ralcation. Today Nan. Today Nan. President Soman Kwan sat in her office on Earth, reading the offers that were flooding in. Species from across the galaxy wanted alliances with humanity. They offered technology, trade agreements, military pacts. Earth could become one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy almost overnight. We should take these, her advisor said. Humanity deserves recognition for what we did. Soman shook her head. That's not why we did it. We didn't fight for power. We fought because it was right. She looked at the offers again. Send polite refusals to all of these. Tell them we appreciate their support. But Earth is not interested in building an empire. But ma'am, we could use these alliances to reshape the galaxy. Exactly, Soman said. And the moment we start seeking power, we become what we fought against. No. Humanity will join the New Covenant Alliance as equals, not rulers. We'll work with other species, not above them. Her advisor looked worried. The galaxy respects strength. If we don't take this opportunity, someone else will. Soman smiled. Then let them. Humanity doesn't need to rule the galaxy. We just need to make it a little better than we found it. On Aqualis Prime, now being rebuilt, Colonel Bora Kim walked through the memorial gardens. They had planted a tree for every human who had died, defending the planet. 3,000 trees, arranged in perfect rows. Vrinathi families came every day to tend them, to make sure they were cared for. A young Vrinathi child approached her. She was maybe 8 years old, her suit decorated with colorful patterns. "Are you one of the Marines?" the child asked, in careful human language. Bora nodded. "Thank you," the child said. "My parents said you saved us. They said humans came from across the galaxy to help us when no one else would." Bora knelt down to the child's level. "Your people saved my species 200 years ago. We were just returning the favor." "But you didn't have to," the child said. "My teacher said you lost many ships. Many people died. Why would you do that for us?" Bora thought about all the answers she could give, about debt and honor and moral obligation. But in the end, she gave the simplest one. "Because you needed help," she said. The child hugged her. Bora hugged back, thinking about the 3,000 who couldn't be here to receive thanks. Who had died so this child could ask these questions. It had been worth it. Every sacrifice, every loss, it had all been worth it. Years passed. The galaxy changed slowly but surely. The Covenant Alliance grew. New species joined, attracted by principles of compassion and mutual aid. The old triumvirate lost power, not through war, but through irrelevance. No one wanted to follow leaders who abandoned their allies. Commander G1, now Admiral G1, commanded the joint human Vrinathi defense fleet. It was a strange assignment, working so closely with the species they had saved. But it felt right. The Vrinathi had saved humanity once. Humanity had returned the favor. Now, they would face the future together. She stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Times Remembrance Asterisk, named in honor of all those who had fallen. Her crew was mixed now. Humans and Vrinathi, working side by side. "Admiral, we're approaching the memorial station," her operations officer reported. G1 nodded. The memorial station orbited where the battle had taken place. It held the names of every human and Vrinathi who had died in the war against the Devourers. Millions of names, carved in crystal, that would last forever. She took a shuttle down to the station alone. She did this every year, on the anniversary of the battle, walking through the halls, reading the names, remembering. She found Captain Sunwoo's name on the wall. She touched it gently. "We did it," she whispered. "We saved them. You'd be proud of what the galaxy has become." "Excuse me," a voice said behind her. G1 turned to find a young Vrinathi woman standing there. She was maybe 20 years old, wearing a university uniform. "Are you Admiral G1 Park?" the woman asked. "I am," G1 said. "I'm studying history," the woman explained. "I'm writing my thesis on the human intervention, on why your species chose to help us." She hesitated. Everyone knows what happened. Everyone knows about the battles and the sacrifices. But I want to understand why. What made humanity different? G1 thought about the question. It was one she had been asked 100 times, 1,000 times. She looked at the names on the wall. All those who had died for a simple principle. 200 years ago, G1 said slowly. The Vrinathi came to Earth when we were dying. They didn't have to help us. We had nothing to offer. But they helped anyway. They asked us to remember, and when the time came, to act with the same compassion they had shown us. "But you lost so much," the student said. 30,000 dead. 40 ships destroyed. Your whole species risked war with the Council. Was it really just about repaying a debt? Jiwan shook her head. It started that way. But it became something more. It became about the kind of species we wanted to be. About the kind of galaxy we wanted to live in. She looked at the student. Your people taught us that civilization isn't measured by weapons or territory. It's measured by compassion. After 7, by the willingness to help others, even when there's no benefit to yourself. The student was quiet for a moment. My grandmother was evacuated from Aqualis Prime. She was in the last ship out. She said she could see the human Marines fighting as her ship lifted off. She said they held the line even though they knew they would die. They did it so she could live? Jiwon said simply. So you could be born. So you could stand here today asking these questions. That's what humans do. We make sure the next generation has a chance. The student touched one of the names on the wall. We learn about this in school. About what humanity did. But I wanted to meet someone who was there. I wanted to understand. Do you? Jiwon asked gently. Do you understand now? The student nodded. I think so. You showed us that strength isn't just about power. It's about choosing to do right. Even when it's hard. Even when it costs everything. Jiwon smiled. That's exactly right. And that's the legacy your grandmother's generation left to you. Not just survival, but the knowledge that there are people in the galaxy who will stand up for what's right. The student thanked her and left. Jiwon remained in the memorial hall, surrounded by the names of the fallen. She thought about how far humanity had come, from a dying species to one that had reshaped the galaxy's understanding of morality. The cost had been high. But the result was a galaxy where species helped each other instead of abandoning them. Where compassion was valued as much as strength. Where the powerful learned that their power came with responsibility. 200 years ago, the Vrinathi had saved humanity and asked only that they remember. Humanity had remembered. And in doing so, they had created something beautiful, a galaxy where debt was measured not in resources or power, but in compassion given and returned. The stars bore witness to what had happened here. They had seen humanity's sacrifice. They had seen species unite, where once they had divided. They had seen the powerful, forced to confront their own failings. And if that made the old powers fear what humanity represented, so be it. Some things were worth being feared for, like the unwavering belief that every life mattered, that no one should be abandoned, that when you were saved, you saved others in turn. That was humanity's debt to the Vrinathi. And in repaying it, they had given the galaxy something far more valuable. Hope. The hope that despite all the darkness, despite all the violence and cruelty the universe could offer, there were still those who would choose light. Still those who would choose to be better. Still those who would pay their debts, no matter the cost. And the stars would remember.